Good afternoon. Welcome to this press conference by Philippe Lazzarini, the Commissioner General of UNRWA. As usual, we will listen to Commissioner General first, and then we will open the floor to questions. Thank you very much. You have the floor, Commissioner General.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. I just ended a briefing with the Member States this afternoon, and I felt it was maybe important to share with you some of the messages I shared with the Member States. Basically, and I will start with a statement, but it has been almost 6 weeks of hell for the people of Gaza. 6 weeks, far too many for the Palestinian, for the women, for the children. 6 weeks, far too long for the Israeli hostage and their family, and far too long for the entire region. It has also been 6 weeks of total disregard for international humanitarian law. I have to say the scale of destruction and loss is just staggering, and this is taking place under our watch. We have just witnessed over the last few weeks the largest displacement of Palestinians since 1948. It's an exodus under our watch, a river of people being forced to flee their home. Some of them were forced to relive the unlivable trauma from the past, mostly unhealed. And others, the younger generation, were forced to live through traumas of ancestors and parents. This week, our team reported people arriving after hours and hours of walking, basically coming from the north of Gaza, Gaza City, to the south. They were dehydrated, hungry, exhausted, and shell-shocked. Many were just asking, what next? Where do I go now? Unlike in other global conflicts in recent years, the people of Gaza are trapped in a 365 square kilometer enclave with no way out, with no border to be crossed, and this enclave has just shrunk by half. Many continue to flock to UNRWA shelter, where we are hosting more than 800,000 people. I went recently to one of these shelters. What I saw there will never leave me. I was shocked by the tragic and sudden transformation of a place I knew very well. I knew for more than 30 years. Until recently, and I know sometimes it's hard to believe, but many people in Gaza, many of them, were living like you and I, with the same kind of dreams, same kind of aspiration for their children. But all of a sudden, in one night, their dignity has been stripped. When I was in this school, the children were pleading for a sip of water or for a loaf of bread. And they were doing this in the same school where many of them used to get teaching and education. Then, we keep talking about the unsanitary living condition in this overcrowded shelter. When I talk to my colleagues and try to understand, first we see it, because there is almost no water in places where you have thousands of people. But then these are places which were never aimed to be shelter. So basically, you're in a situation where not only water is not present, but you have maybe one toilet available for 700-800 people. That's the kind of living condition. On top of that, most of the people left their home at the last minute. They left without anything. And many of them, basically, do not have even the clothes to change their clothes after 6 weeks. That's what we are talking when we talk about, people having lost their dignity. Have been stripped from their dignity. Now, no doubt that this kind of rapid deterioration brings us back to a kind of a medieval age. The siege that we see, we know, is a collective punishment imposed to an entire population. Now, maybe let me give some of the latest issue of concern for us, but also few issues where I would like to address some misunderstanding or information, depending on. The first one, where I want to be clear and repeat, I said it, there is nowhere safe in Gaza. Whether in the north, in the south, in the middle, there is none. People have been asked to go from the north to the south, but in reality, one third of the people killed have been killed in the south. So the south is not safe. Even the UN compounds are not safe. Up to 60 of them have been hit since the beginning of the conflict. We had more than 60 people killed. We had hundreds of people injured. There is no safe place. I am saying this because you heard certainly yesterday Martin Griffiths talking about the safe zone or humanitarian zone. Basically, in a war situation, there is no such safe zone or humanitarian zone where people could feel safe. Secondly, we have at least 103 UNRWA colleagues who have been killed. This is the number we are able to confirm. The reality is we might have more people who have been killed, and I'm worried that some of them are still under the rubble. These were UNRWA colleagues. They had absolutely nothing to do with the conflict per se. They were civil servants of the United Nations, dedicated to serving the community, and they have now been killed. I know that last Monday in Geneva, like across the world, the United Nations declared half-mast to remember them, but we did it everywhere except in Gaza, where basically our colleagues felt very strongly that the best way to honor them is through a message that we will continue and maintain our humanitarian response in the Gaza Strip. Thirdly, because there have been, again, a number of articles, I want to make it clear again, UNRWA does not teach hatred in its school. Over the past few weeks and amid a sea of emotions, a targeted and orchestrated campaign was launched against our education system, which in reality is recognized for its excellence. So let me just reconfirm a few facts. UNRWA rejects claims linking its personnel and school to the abhorrent October 7 attack in Israel. Attacks that UNRWA has condemned in the strongest term and which I will always continue to condemn. I question the motivation of those who make such claim through large advocacy campaigns, especially under these current circumstances. I've always been clear on this. UNRWA is committed to upholding UN humanitarian principle, and we have absolutely no zero tolerance. We have a zero tolerance for hate speech, racism, and incitement to discrimination, hostility, or violence. I acknowledge that we are operating in a very emotional, divided environment, that the environment has risk, but as a UN, when it comes to this, we apply the no-tolerance policy. Fourth, the question of diversion. UNRWA does not let aid be diverted. First of all, we are an agency who directly implements its program. We do not have any intermediary. Secondly, whenever we work with suppliers, they are systematically checked against a sanction list. Thirdly, we also, all our staff, on a yearly basis, the name are communicated to the host country, and when it comes to occupied Palestinian territory, also to the occupying state being Israel. In reality, we are certainly one of the most scrutinized organizations. I experience this usually when I travel in capitals. Whenever we go to a parliament, most of the questions about international aid are in reality directed to UNRWA. Fifth, UNRWA is now running out of fuel. We will not be able to uphold our commitment to provide for the Palestinian people any longer. I do believe there is a deliberate attempt to strangle our operation and paralyze the UNRWA operation. For weeks on end, we have pleaded, and I have pleaded 3 weeks ago, I had a press conference already warning about the impact of the lack of fuel. We have succeeded over the last 3 weeks to tap into the remaining fuel in the Gaza Strip, which was not UNRWA fuel, and which we always coordinated with the Israeli authorities. But now we are running out. And yesterday, we received a tiny shipment of fuel, in reality, half a truck, and on top of that, it was delivered with conditionalities, meaning that is to be used only and exclusively for the trucks collecting the goods arriving at the Rafah. Which means this fuel cannot be used for any other purposes, which means that the fuel is not available anymore for example, the desalination water station, for example, the sewage pumping system, or for the bakeries. And as from yesterday, 70% of the population in the south has no access anymore to clean water. And as of today, we have raw sewage starting to flow in the streets. So without the fuel, we will not be able to bring the relief that we are receiving from Egypt to the people in need. And clearly, if the issue of the fuel is not addressed, we run the risk to have to suspend the entire humanitarian operation. I do believe that it is outrageous that humanitarian agencies are reduced to begging for fuel and forced after that to decide who we will assist or not assist when you have such a large population in a situation of life-saving. Another point I want to raise is the fact that UN facilities have been violated over the last 6 weeks quite regularly. I mentioned before the premises sheltering displaced people, but I would like also to tell you that over the last few days, I received report that several of our UNRWA schools have been used for military purposes, including a recent discovery of weapons in schools and including the positioning of Israeli forces tanks in at least 2 UN schools. I reiterate here that UN facilities must never be used for military purposes or political gains and control. This is precisely the meaning of the UN flag. Before I conclude, just let me, and I think it's important to always remember the situation in the West Bank. We should not forget the plight of the Palestinians in East Jerusalem and in the West Bank. Long before October 7, massacre, there were a lot of violence, mainly in the refugee camps. But today, we have recorded since the beginning of the year more than 400 people killed, which is nearly 3 times of last year. And last year was already the highest number of people killed in record since 2005. I just came back from a visit before coming here in a Shufat camp in East Jerusalem, where staff basically told me how they are living in constant fear and worry amid the Israeli forces' operation. And just after I left the Shufat camp, the school I visited had to evacuate again with 600 girls and boys because of such an operation. So maybe in conclusion, and just before taking a question, again, I reiterate our ask. A ceasefire now is urgently needed if we want to save whatever is left of our humanity. In fact, it is long overdue. I'm just receiving the information now that Gaza is again in a total communication blackout. And if it is in a total communication blackout, it's because there is no fuel. So we know, and I told to the member state, no fuel, no bakery, no fuel, no hospital, no fuel, no water, and here, no fuel, no communication. And no communication is also amplifying the anxiety and the panic, and is also accelerating the last remaining civilian order that we have in the Gaza Strip. So first, we need a ceasefire. We need fuel, fuel, and fuel. I expect a decision to be a decision should have been taken long time ago, but the more we wait, the more we will see now the siege taking over and could become the main reason why people would die and be killed in the Gaza Strip. And the last point, when we talk about unhindered, unconditional and meaningful access of commodities in the Gaza Strip, it's not only and just for humanitarian assistance, it's also to make sure that basic commodities be available on the market, and for that we need also a flow of commercial movement in the Gaza Strip. I think I will stop here. I'm ready to take questions.
Thank you very much.